usually, design goes into another tool like Webflow or something like that. But Figma's gone, you know what? Stuff that. You're just going to build the website inside of Figma, which is crazy.
Susan, you're going to want to check this out.
All right, Daryl, here we go. You must be excited for this one because you are, I guess,
love a good config update. Love checking it out.
The Figma's #1 fan. I remember when you told us to move to Figma and we were using a Sketch, was it?
Yeah, Sketch, and maybe even a little bit of Photoshop back then. Slicing in Photoshop.
We went from
XD.
Photoshop to XD, and then you pushed us into Sketch. And you're like, "Oh, we're using Figma now." And I was like, "Bro,
new tool.
Can we have the designs in one system, please?" But
yeah.
But it was
remember in Sketch time, it used to be in actual files on your computer. That's how old we are.
Yeah, we are quite old. You could tell it in my eyes. I've seen things.
That's why I wear the hat covering up the grays.
I do. Yeah, cool. So yeah, look, we've been Figma users for a long time, and probably from the early days. I reckon. I think it was still probably even in beta. I don't even know if that was a thing, but it felt like it was very, very early on.
We would have been in under 5,000 users, definitely.
Yeah,
because it was very, very early we found it.
Yeah, but excitingly, we've been along for the journey. We've watched a few fumbles. I guess that the last year's AI reveal was a bit meh. Nothing really came from that. We never really used those features, but this...
I use remove background all the time. It's incredibly convenient. Just a quick remove background. That's about all I do. And sometimes replacing data, just to have mock data. But it doesn't do anything they said it was going to do. And they're also saying it's going to do this year, which is the make tool, which is AI prompt, and it makes everything for you.
You can add text to a path, make wiggly dynamic strokes, use brushes and blurs.
Let's talk about Make tool. Let's go straight into that. What's the new Make tool?
Yep. So Make is like the cursor for Figma. You type stuff in and it'll help you make it, design it, and also, I believe, code it. So it seems like everyone's going that way. The coding part, the vibe designing.
From the vibes, man.
Yep. We're all developers now. The barrier for entry is lower. The barrier for entry for high quality product has not changed at all. That's my general perspective on it. Yes, you can do stuff with it. It's not going to be as good as if you really work through it and have people who know what they're doing.
But it is nice to ideate, throw some stuff out. Look, to be fair, we got some cool stuff out of a few little vibe coding sessions.
Yep,
some cool
100%.
ideas that you probably wouldn't have thought of. So look, give credit where credit's due. So that's the Figma Make. Is that called Make?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, Figma Make or whatever it's called. Anyway, I'm going to get the names wrong. But
the
thing that we wanted to really touch on is this Figma website builder. Or what is that called? Is it called website?
Sites.
Sites.
Figma
Sites. Very, very unique naming. So a little bit of background about Figma. They actually were going to sell to Adobe, and then they had $1 billion clause, a pullout clause, which is insane. And that actually, because it got blocked by, the anti-competitive rules in America, and they ended up with $1 billion, just cash.
Just in the pocket.
So that's really accelerated their growth. They got a lot of people and a lot of smart people. So this is a really cool feature that they've actually gone. So usually, design goes into another tool like Webflow or something like that. You go and build the design and thing, and they can push from there and they can pull from Figma, all that kind of stuff. But Figma's gone, you know what? Stuff that. You're just going to build the website inside of Figma, which is crazy. So Daryl, you know a lot about it. So let's
so the writing was on the wall a long time ago, because all the plugins that people have made have shown user demand for a very long time to export Figma to whatever coding language or website. There was acquisitions of Dynaboard about 2-3 years ago. This is pre even the acquisition by Adobe being spoken about, which was like the code Figma to code sort of component, and then Modifly more recently, which was another tool that sort of hinted at the same thing. So they've been amassing the team or acquiring the team to build it for a long time, and it's finally here. Having looked at it and played with it, it's pretty impressive. It looks like they've taken a lot of the good things from Framer. It's very early days. It's a young product. I would worry about how much it's going to get developed in the long term, only because I don't know if it will have the same financial outcomes that Buzz will, which is what I would call the Canva competitor. I think the market and the financials will support that more than they do Sites, because I think on the scale that a Figma is at, they have to make all of their decisions to commit resources based on how much money they can make from them. And you'll see some improvements to all their products all the time, but the things that they go really hard on are going to be the things that make them the most money. And if that becomes Buzz, like, it's not going to be Draw. They're doing the drawing tools just to make everyone happy in the illustration space. But I think the content teams and Buzz will make more money for them. They'll get more new subscriptions from it. And Sites will be just a side product that it makes sense for the users to be able to just push a website out. But I'm not sure how much resources they'll give it versus an individual company like Framer or Webflow, who that's their whole jam.
The buzz on Twitter, funnily enough, news on Twitter is that, I mean, I'm just literally one post, but Brett from Design Joy is like the #1 Webflow fan. He's kind of posted that he's a bit disappointed because Webflow has not been innovating like Framer and Figma. Like, especially, they've come to the party and like really innovated, whereas Webflow's kind of sitting on their laurels. And he still thinks they're the best tool by far, but like they need to keep pushing now.
Yeah.
And for me, it's so frightening because it feels this space is so saturated to me. I'm like,
if you think you can just ignore other software and create your own vector doodles in some tab on some browser, then you have got another thing coming.
why would you build another website? Everyone's doing it. Everyone's doing it. It's like how can you, like, all these guys like vibe coding, the Windsurf, Cursor, then you got like Bolt, and you got what's it, Lovable, and all everyone's doing the same thing, right? Like, in the end of the day, like, obviously Cursor and stuff are a little bit lower level, but the same kind of goal. You say stuff, website, push it, happy days. Now you got like, even in Australia, we've got Reloom, we've got Figma now. It's just the market is so saturated and there's so much money behind it.
Yeah.
Now,
I mean, look at WordPress, right? WordPress is a huge business, and there's 1,000 supporting businesses that help you implement WordPress. There's agencies that will build you WordPress sites, and it is so old-fashioned, and it still makes so much money. And I think, like, looking at Figma, once you get that big, you don't have a choice not to try and get all the money you can from all the markets you can. And I think I said this last night, because they control the early creative process, they can take a huge portion with probably considerably smaller effort. And for them, a big team doesn't cost as much because they've got money. They can probably compete with most of the website builders quite easily without it taking like the real attention off, like, what are the big moves that make us money long term. It's just another thing that they're very well positioned to take a good slice of, an important enough slice where they could just look at team size of 40 or 50 doing the product development for sites. How much money can we make? How much uplift does it give to the other subscriptions that we have? It's probably just a no-brainer for them, where it's like, it's not a consideration that they don't have to worry about split focus because they have so many like high performing teams doing really good work.
it's true. I mean, I think at that scale, like, we were looking, they're up to like, I mean, it's hard to know the data because it is a pro company, but it was like, people say like between 1,500 to 2,500 people. Like, that's a lot of people. And Figma is like, we looked at the data as well. They started, and it took them 3 to 3.5 years to build the initial product because it was a very complicated, and it was the first time, they have sync engines and stuff like that. Because it's a multiplayer experience. You get everyone doing design. It's a crazy tool. Like, in its core, it
was an absolute leap forward. Like, actually use the word game changer for what it was at the time compared to the tools at the time. The collaborative stuff, even though we mocked it at the start because we were like, collaborative is kind of lame. You could just look at the file, but like, it's one of the things that actually is quite useful.
But when it went
nothing else could do it
remote, that's when it went nuts. In person, it didn't really make sense. We're like, I can just stand over your shoulder and have a check, and it's fine. But when you went remote, it was like, oh, okay, here we go.
So handy to be able to have like a video call and also just be all looking at the same screen and like clicking stuff.
They're all moving around. Just a little spice. What are you working on? Oh, that looks interesting.
Yeah,
cool.
Which was,
cool.
I would say, one of the things that was really helpful about that for us is like, when you're not submitting things for feedback, you can still jump in, see where something's up to without having to like save file, upload file, and get more iterative feedback while things are in progress, for better or for worse in that case.
Yeah, especially worse when Ken's involved. But what where that was kind of going was like, their team's so skilled, and I reckon technically they would have some really, really smart people, especially in that space. And it is a hard tool to build, especially at the performance. Like, have you ever seen a canvas that Daryl's produced? you'd be shocked.
Yeah, there's a bit going on.
There's a bit going on. There's a
I
few
have overloaded Figma at times with files and had to make the choice of like how to separate stuff because there's too much in one file
Yeah,
or even
it's
in one
impressive.
page.
It's impressive. They've got pages, but you know, why not put it all in one?
Yeah.
But so what I'm saying is, they've got some really talented people, and they are able to spool off now at this stage, like Daryl said, teams that can focus. So they're still focused on Figma as a tool, but they're able to build different products off of Figma. But also, it's really nice that scale. It gives you more options for pricing. So what you can see is now they can introduce different tiers that include different tools. So depending on what you want, and they did readjust their pricing system, which was interesting, so that you can now choose what you want, and then you get the pro. And it's always like, you know, same as Adobe. You buy Adobe Creative Cloud. I know a lot of people hate them, but they do have a lot of useful tools, and you just pay one fee and you get every single tool, and it becomes this really hard thing. You're like, oh, I don't need all those, but for another $20, I just get everything. Stuff it. I'll just get everything. But I think a highlight for me here is at the size and scale, they're moving really fast. I think to be able to launch this much stuff in 1 year is very impressive. Like, you don't see this from big companies.
Yep.
And I still think like maybe last year was a bit of a flop, and maybe it was because it's like maybe they're doing a 2-year cycle. Maybe that's what's kind of probably.
Well, they
But-
still, so like Fig Jam was the first new product, and that was 2 or 3 years ago now. And then more recently, it was completely overhaul the entire user interface,
Mhm.
launch the AI stuff, and also slides. So that was sort of one core product, which was fixing your existing stuff, and then slides. Now they've launched essentially 3 tools in 1 year. So the trajectory of how fast they're building is only getting better. I guess it's how good they are long term is still to be seen.
I reckon what maybe has slowed them down is that acquisition process, all that paperwork and all that.
That's why you pay the billy for it, I guess.
Yeah, it's that distraction. And then they were like, cool, let's just go ham now again. And they've just probably doubled their valuation because now they're just taking up a whole nother market. So we just wanted to chat about this because I think it's just so interesting to watch big companies actually execute and do things well. And I think the key pull out from here was people are saying that Figma's listening to their users again. And that is like so cool. Like a lot of big businesses just deviate and they just stop listening. And everyone's saying, well, all the new fine tuning and stuff is actually what the users want.
I mean, the drawing tools it's like a lot of the things they announced this year is like they watch user sessions very closely. So it's like, why else would you know that everyone wants to build marketing assets in there and does all of these variations of things? Why else would you know that you need to change the origin point when rotating an SVG? Like some of the cutout tools that they've done for the SVG will save me many minutes in a day if I'm ever working in vectors because of how fiddly it used to be. And I'm like, that just saves so much time. And then people have the nerve to complain that it's expensive still. I'm like, dude, shut the front door. Like, honestly, the things that it can do for you and the things you can get done and the amount of like plugins and weird hacks that you don't have to do anymore, they've definitely been watching people and learning what people are actually doing in there because it's so far outside of what they started with. But because it was such a good tool, everyone started doing everything in there. I know that was my path anyway. Like, I won't use another tool because it doesn't have auto layout, even though no one in a Photoshop or Illustrator team would have ever thought we need auto layout in here. Like, it makes everything easy to work with, and they've consistently done enough really good usability for designers that now they need to address the other things, which is drawing and artists and site builders and stuff, because the other parts of the tool are so good. Everyone just wants to be in there to do it.
Yeah, it's crazy, but yeah, it is. Yeah, they've gone down this path now where it's like they're basically just grabbing territory. They just want to get as much as they can to keep growing because you have to keep growing, and that unfortunately because that is, you know, you can't just be the best one thing. You now got to keep pushing. So very interesting to watch, very exciting. If you do use Figma, if you haven't used Figma before, give it a try. Definitely, we recommend it. Love the tool. I think they've done such a great job, and they're doing a great job across the board. So good on them.
Yeah.
Awesome. Catch you later.
Don't let your loved ones be the last to know about Figma Draw.